Share screen here. Share. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. Normally on Wednesdays, Kelly, our in-house lender, is doing this classes, but she is out of town today. So you got me. And this is a great topic, closing costs and settlement charges. So all agents should have some knowledge of how closing costs works and settlement charges. Of course, reach out to your favorite lender, and hopefully Kelly's one of them. And she can go over everything line item by line item for your clients and all that. But you have to get a general idea of what these things are. So that's what the class is today. So I'm going to breeze through some of these. So helping clients understand the true cost of buying a home, loan fees, lender charges, title and escrow expenses, prepaid items, in reserves, government and recording fees, seller concessions and negotiations. Pro tips: clients are often surprised by closing costs. Setting expectations early helps avoid last minute stress and builds trust. Again, knowing what example when you have a client and there's interviewing lenders and you see a big difference of closing costs slash settlement charges. We're going to learn a little bit about this because sometimes some lenders in initial conversations are not going over all charges, just closing costs or lender fees or title fees or prepaid items and taxes and insurance. And that's just the whole point of this class, is give you an overview of everything buyers will need. So what are closing costs? Fees paid to complete the purchase transaction, usually from 2 to 5% of loan amount, including lender, title, government charges, separate from down payment, detailed on a closing disclosure. So explain that closing costs are normal and are not extra profit for lenders or realtors. They are third party and transaction related expenses. So every lender, every agent, or every buyer and seller are going to have closing costs. When it's a buyer, they have lender fees, they have title fees and government charges. And when there's a seller, they might not have lender fees because they're not the buyer, but they have title fees and taxes and things that they have to pay. So there's always going to be closing costs somehow, either side. Lender fees, loan origination fees, discount points to lower interest rates, credit report fees, underwriting and processing, appraisal fees. Encourage clients to compare loan estimates from multiple lenders so they could understand their options and costs. Now, with this, really, if buyers want to go apples to apples with lenders, if they're going boom, 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 I want to interview lenders, don't ask about the total costs, the total settlement charges. Ask about just lender fees, because this is where it differs. If you have two lenders and they have their lender fees and their rates, the title costs are going to be identically the same. You use it. Lender 1, 2, or 3, title costs, settlement charges should be identical because the lender is not in control of those. It's just part of the process of buying the house. But what the lender's in control of, the rate and cost. Apples to apples, because crazy things, some buyers, surprise, shop rate. They just shop rate. And then all of a sudden they don't realize that there's more fees with this one because, oh, look, I got a low rate, but you spent thousands of dollars more in lender fees to get that rate. And some people just sharp, costs, and then they get a high rate. So you got to, if in a perfect world, if a lender said, hey, my rate's this, okay, what are my costs? And then the next lender, what is your cost and what are your rates, and see where they match up. And if they have they have same rate, who has a lower cost? So many times agents or buyers get confused between why is it so different, but they're all within a range. So I could honestly say there's not too many banks or mortgage companies out there gouging people, but there are a few, but not any major ones on that. And rates can differ. You get a rate in the morning, could be different by the afternoon. So sometimes buyers get confused about that. Title and settlement charges. Title insurance protects owners' rights. Title search verifies clear ownership. Escrow and settlement company fees, attorney fees, wire and courier fees. Pro tip, remind buyers that title insurance is a one-time fee that protects one of their largest investments. So, questions. When buyers I'm just sticking with buyers, have questions about title insurance, always explain the best so the title company can explain that to them. Because there's different levels of title insurance and coverages, and it's different as you see in our purchase agreements as choices. But if they have, I want to know exactly, call the title company, get your title expert, get your title rep on the phone with your client. Or if they just want to know what it is, it's protect their ownership. And what title insurance does in general is that protects in any defects in transfer of ownership. So if all of a sudden someone bought a house and there was a defect in the title, or someone did get transferred right down the chain of title of all owners and sellers and buyers and sellers before them, in theory, title insurance is there to protect that they all of a sudden say, oh, you don't own this house anymore, if that makes sense. So and then title searches, search any liens that are attached to the property. Escrow and settlement company fees. Every title company is a little bit different on what they charge for searches and fees for escrow and settlement charges of handling the title work involved. And sometimes there's attorney fees where for preparing the deeds, or in other states, attorneys handle the title work. Government recording fees, county recording fees, transfer tax, mortgage recording fees, state and local taxes, deed recording charges. So these are all on the settlement statement and usually paid by the seller, usually, but it can be negotiated in that. So it's different throughout our purchase agreements and what's common in different parts of the state. How we handle things in Cincinnati area traditionally is a little bit different in the purchase agreements than handled in Columbus area and then Northeast Ohio. So it is not even the same throughout the state. But bottom line, everything's negotiable. Seller can say, hey, buyer, you're paying all of this. There's no set thing that says, like a law that says seller has to pay or buyer has to pay. It's all a negotiation. But when it comes to government and recording fees, someone's got to pay. It's going to be charged. Who's going to pay? Normally the seller, but can be negotiated. Pro tip, some tax and transfer fee are negotiable with buyer or seller, depending on local customs contract. I just said that. I didn't even read it. Prepaid expense and escrow accounts, homeowners insurance premiums, property tax reserves, mortgage interest collected at closing, initial escrow account deposits, flood insurance, if required. Pro tip, prepaid expenses are not fees. They are funds set aside for future taxes and insurance obligations and prepaid interest. So, homeowners insurance, property tax reserve, mortgage interest collected at closing. So prepaid interest, mortgage interest. So example, so prepaids, these are not fees. These are things that they're going for. So sometimes at closing, if required, if it wasn't paid before, the lender requires the first year of homeowner insurance to be paid, and sometimes at settlement. Prepaid interest, example, this is one thing that gets people when they close a loan, close a house. Example, when you pay your mortgage, like the first of a month, in theory, it's for the previous month. It's for the month before. So when you have something closes today, at closing, they're going to have prepaid interest for every day to the end of the month. This is prepaid interest. This is to the mortgage company for the loan starting today, but there's going to be no complete payment. That's what prepaid interest is. It's for today to the end. You're paying for your mortgage per day to the end of the month, so the next payment will cover the whole mortgage. So today to the end of the month, there's going to be no payment for the buyer the 1st of July, but the next payment will be due August 1st for July. Does that make sense? So all of a sudden, say we close something July 3rd. They're going to pay prepaid interest from July 3rd to the end of the month. And then the August payment is going to be September 1st. So these are prepaid. So sometimes, again, buyers are trying to compare apples to apples. You have a really good loan officer that's completely 100% giving you a buyer a full picture. This is your closing costs. These are your fees. These are the title fees. These are your prepaid expenses based on your purchase agreement and tax property tax reserves. Where this is if in an easy way to explain it is that typically property taxes are 6 months behind. So if you're collecting property tax every month in your payments, there's sometimes not enough money. Say right now, if say we're closed right, the minimum, there's always usually 3 months of tax reserves required, because in 3 months from now, say the 6-month period is up, the bank's going to need 6 months worth of taxes. So I'll just leave it at that, because I could go on and on about different scenarios, but there's always tax reserves. So when they make their payments, they have that. So some lenders, when they're giving your buyer a quote of closing costs and rate, that's all they give them, closing cost rate. They don't give them these other things that are going to be needed in the total settlement card. And then they're like, why are you, this one lender is at $3,000 in closing costs, and then this other lender is in $9,000 in total settlement costs, because that lender include all the prepaid stuff that the first lender didn't even tell the buyer yet, because technically those are not fees, but they're going to incur those and make sure that they have those. And again, buyers get confused, but you want to be knowledgeable about these types of things so you could see where the differences are. Way buyers can reduce their closing cost requests: seller concessions, negotiate lender credits, compare lender and title companies, choose appropriate loan programs, ask about first-time buyer assistance. Pro tip: seller concessions can often help buyers preserve cash without affecting the purchase price significantly. I feel every buyer should ask for closing concessions. There's a derp. So some agents ask, what's the difference between asking for closing costs and concessions? It's a big difference in terminology. If you as a buyer ask for every buyer asks for seller to pay buyers closing costs, technically they're just costs. Costs, the word cost could be just for fees, not including the settlement, the prepaids, which are not fees. They're not really costs. They're prepaid interest, prepaying for your taxes. You're prepaying things that are not fees for service. That's the difference between costs and concessions. So a lot of lenders like to use concessions, pay up to 3% of concessions. That includes everything. So I always like to negotiate that into the contract, because it saves your buyer money. They're kind of like financing their closing costs. Educate clients and avoid surprises. Review the loan estimates early. So you can't love Agents, when their buyers get pre-approved or get information from their lender, ask the lender, hey, can I see that too? So I could, explain to the buyer and help you explain different things and see what you are doing. Explain closing disclosures before closing day, discuss cash needed to close up front, encourage clients to ask questions, work closely with lenders and title companies. Pro tip, the smoother the closing process, the more referrals you earn. Clients appreciate realtors who educate them and eliminate surprises. So when you have knowledge, not telling loan officers to do what they do for a job, but at least you understand the process of what closing is. So the best thing to do is get with your favorite lender, say, and have a little class with them. They in their system print out like a settlement closing disclosure with all the fees and prepaid items or whatever, or get an example from your lender. Say, hey, I have a buyer going to be buying a house. Can I have just, can you write me an estimate? You give me on a spreadsheet of just generally what they're going to come across and just in general. And so you could hand it to them and show them, hey, you're looking in the price range of 200 to 300,000 or 250, and you're looking in this city, and we're going to guesstimate what the property taxes are, all of it. And the crazy thing is, it still happens almost daily to every busy loan officer. Buyers are going, hey, you gave me this estimate. Here's my fees, here's my this. And then all of a sudden they put an offer on a house, and the lender does it and like, oh yeah, here you are, rates the same, everything. Here's your payment. Like, what happened to my payment? It went up $200 a month. What happened from the first one? Oh, well, we guesstimated because you didn't tell me where you're looking, the property taxes on this, and the property taxes are $200 more a month. So sometimes buyers go, example, if you go from different counties, like, hey, I'm right on the county line. I'm buying a $500,000 house in Cuyahoga County, but I'm going to buy. I'm looking over in the border in Lake County or Geauga County, and then all of a sudden, like, wow, the taxes are pretty different. It affects my payment. It also affects your prepaid taxes and the amount of money you're going to need to close. So just to give you some tips that it varies. Your payments, like, oh, here's your payment, especially when they pre-approve them on or give them something on a house. They put an offer in and it didn't go through, and then they bought it, so they got a real estimate, and they go to another city and the property taxes are higher. So key takeaways: down payment does not equal total cash needed. So sometimes people say, example, I got $30,000 for a down payment. Is it $30,000 for a down payment or total cash to close? And usually a buyer that hasn't talked to lender goes, what's the difference? Well, you're going to have closing costs, prepaid items, but we're going to get you to a lender to explain everything in detail. But you're going to need, what is the total amount of money you need? So if someone says, listen, I need X amount of dollars to put down on a house. Someone told me down payment. This happens to lenders. They go, hey, the buyers call them, say, hey, I had a friend that said they only need 3% down to buy a house. I have 3% down. Well, you can't buy a house. Well, I have the 3% for the down payment. Like, no, but you don't have any extra money for closing costs, prepaid. So yeah, it can be worked into the loan, can do that. Or you don't have any extra money in the bank that are what bank lenders will call reserves. You can't empty out your bank account and every dollar you own with your settlement charges and down payment, and you got to wait till your next check from your job to hopefully pay the next mortgage payment. They're not going to lend on that. So buyers should budget for down payment, closing costs, prepaid tax and insurance, moving expenses, and emergency reserves. An educated buyer is a confident buyer, and a confident buyer are more likely to close successfully and refer future business. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen there. Let's see here. I'm back here. Excuse me. So the thing to remember today is just be knowledgeable about different fees and prepaids and that. get with your lender, get a specific, like, see what a settlement chart, fee, form looks like. Even when you close a transaction, ask the buyer or the title company if you could get a copy of the settlement statement. If you haven't seen an actual settlement statement from a title company or haven't seen one in a while, get a refresher. Take a look at it. So get a refresher of two things. One, what a buyer typically sees from a lender when they're applying for the loan. And it's very similar to a settlement statement because finally, years ago, the government regulations got involved. So it can't look so different. We need line items. We need things to match up. So at closing, it doesn't look totally different from the lender, but there are some differences. So at least know what you should be seeing from a lender. Your buyer should see. This is typically what they should be getting. And then a copy of their settlement at closing. A lot of title companies send their agents those two for them to review. It's up to your buyer to allow you to see those. So some title companies automatically send them out, but you could ask for one just for your buyer so you could review with them and make sure everything's in order. So you could really understand the credits, what it looks like when the commission goes on there, what it looks like when there's tax credits from the seller to the buyer and why and all of that. So again, don't be the expert, but at least be knowledgeable when the buyer is asking you questions. So hopefully that made some sense today about that. I know Kelly would have been way more detailed than I would. So if you want, reach out to Kelly. She'll go over it with you more. She's happy to set up a time with you and really educate you. Geez, after talking with Kelly and her you could be like a loan officer assistant by the time she's done. She's very thorough and loves teaching. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Remember, reach out, call, text me, email me anytime, and I hope to talk to many of you very soon. Bye-bye.